start. Hi everyone. Welcome. This is the first interview that I'm doing. We have Seen with me, uh, Seen and right. So basically, Seen. Hi. Seen is
Hi.
Seen is a mindfulness coach, a Vipassana instructor. He's basically an American based out of Thailand. So he has a long story. His spiritual journey is there. So, Seen, basically, we'll just start. You can just share something about you, your journey, till date. That will help our viewers.
Okay. Well, I know you sent me a list of questions, including
Yeah.
where did my journey start, and I probably can answer a number of them in that story.
Yeah.
I can't really say when my journey started. I know it was before this lifetime. I was a monk last life, so
Okay.
it had already started then. But there are gaps in the memory I have, or the memories I have, where I had previous lifetimes where I definitely was not a good person. Uh,
Right.
so,
We've always all been.
I experienced being killed and I experienced killing. And
Okay. Okay.
uh, I'm sure somewhere along the way that led me to a spiritual path, but I don't know the exact beginnings. This lifetime, I was a rather conscious child. And so between the ages of maybe 7 and 10, there was a lot of observation where I was looking at people's behaviors and interactions and questioning why we so often hurt each other, and sometimes intentionally. And I often was trying to right wrongs and make peace between people. And starting around 12 to 14, I started giving up on that.
Okay.
I felt overwhelmed by people's lack of caring, of how they contributed to this world.
Right.
And I did a period of alcohol and drugs and depression,
Okay. Right.
feeling lost.
Right.
I also explored different religions in the early part of that. And I kind of put myself back to sleep.
Right.
And just about a week before I turned 19, I fell on a glass in the middle of the night after going to the toilet. And I cut an artery in 3 and bled to death. And it skipped from Sean dying on the floor to oneness, to a experience of singularity that
Great. Wow.
there was no me, there was no individual left.
Right. Okay.
And the experience was just timeless love.
Wow. Okay.
There
Great.
was nothing else. And as fantastic as that seems, okay, I come back into my body, and then I have to adjust to, this world seems rather shallow or empty compared to that beautiful experience, right?
Right. Right.
And being an American, that culture, unlike India's, is not
Right.
very rich in spirituality.
Right. Right.
There weren't people to answer my questions there.
True. 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 True.
And so for me, it's an honor to be interacting with you and with other Indians, because within about a year of that occurring, I found myself going to India.
Right.
And
Right.
that's where my heart opened.
Okay.
And I think for anybody's journey, the experience of heart opening is so very monumental.
Right. Right. Right.
You then have access to higher consciousness. Maybe that's not clear when it first happens, but that is what that experience bridges you to. And so I traveled more and more. In a sense, that was some further education after university of becoming more human and less American and learning more of the world that we're privy to. Finding more gratitude for this beautiful place that I don't know how long it took to get to this realm of creation, but I think we very often take it for granted when it is spectacular.
Very true. Yeah.
So that's kind of I ended up finding my core practice. As I said, I was brought up very unusually. My parents brought both my sister and I up to choose our own beliefs. We kind of look at life like we're all different types of plants.
Yes.
And we need different qualities in the soil to grow.
Right.
And so, and some people need shade and some people need sun and more water, less water. And the different religions offer those differences. So I don't view any religion as being the right one. My mother is, So my mother is a mix of Hindu and Christian. Her practices are all Hindu, but she likes the community of the Christianity, and at least where she is, there is a beautiful Hindu temple on the island they live, but it's pretty far from where they live. So my perspective is that the Christian part is more for community experience than anything else. She does Raja Yoga. She's almost 80 and vibrant, full of vitality and gratitude, and she gets up every morning 3 to 4 in the morning to sit in the light and receive her messages, and she has been an inspiration in my own life. But my practice, after trying many other practices, is Vipassana, and specifically Satipat.
Right. And that is where actually, we all, as spiritual seekers, we have this question that we go through. There are so many modalities, so many techniques that are available. So do you think that at one point you have to fix your mind on one particular technique? And like for Vipassana, like what made you, choose that technique? Like you have done a lot of healing modalities and everything. So what made you like zero in on Vipassana and then go deep into it? So what are your thoughts on that?
Part of my travels was making an effort to find what my practice was. I think the best advice I had been ever given was find a practice you will do.
Find a practice you will do.
Yes, right. Because you can do the best practice possible, but if you don't do it regularly, it's not going to take you far.
Consistency, right. Yeah.
I think in a way that my metaphor before of some plants need more light and some plants need more shade is kind of in reference to our practices. And so we have to find the practices that work for us, that we connect to.
Right.
Hey, walk those as far as you can go with them.
Right.
So I had done some Tantra. I was doing a tantric experience when I went through a heartbreak, and it was not my first heartbreak. So I knew prior to that, 3 to 4 years to heal a broken heart. And doing that tantric practice, it was intense to go through a broken heart. It was, for a month, I was waking up in intensely different states. But the practice was to pour myself into what I was feeling and don't judge it, be responsible about it.
Right.
And it cleared my broken heart in 3 to 4 weeks flat. But it was a roller coaster. And I'm glad I didn't have to go to the office at that time.
All right. True.
So it was okay. I had a Kundalini awakening before that. And that was probably the most enjoyable spiritual experience for 3 to 4 days that I ever had.
And it was like spontaneous, just happened, or like you were doing some spiritual practice and maybe paused?
I was not doing Kundalini meditation. I was in a set of leadership courses.
Okay,
And one of the events, I mean, we did a lot of internal work.
right.
So I think part of that helped access. But one of the events, they had some high ropes courses. And one of the events was like a plank off of a cliff. And we had safety gear. We had a harness on. The mind does not care that you have a harness on. When you go at the end of the cliff or the end of the plank of wood off the
Right.
cliff
Very true.
and you lean forward,
Right, right,
right?
right, right.
So they didn't explain to us that it was designed to open all your chakras. And
Okay,
you went to the end of the plank, your toes over the end, and you lean forward at your ankles so that your life
okay,
is in the hands of the person holding the rope. It
right.
is a complete trust, and
Okay,
it was immediate. The Kundalini didn't wake up immediately, but the energy started coming in. I went into a higher vibratory state. The guy holding the rope said, "Do you want to say anything?" And I just screamed, "I love you," out to this beautiful valley in front of
oh,
me.
okay, okay.
And
Wonderful.
when I came off, I at the time I had stitches in my right index finger. I could only bend it a little bit.
Okay,
Within 2 minutes, I had full flexibility back. I
okay,
took the bandage off and it had closed up, and so I know the miraculous nature of Kundalini. I was able to bring that higher vibration. I mean, I was in bliss. I was in a state of ecstasy, and I was able to bring that vibratory state back on through a certain concentration. And in the third day, when I was doing that, I felt a little tickle in my lower abdomen, and I just felt like giggling like a little child. And
okay,
so I did, and
okay,
something woke up that was an
okay,
even higher vibration. But
okay.
it didn't take me to enlightenment. I just got to
Right,
enjoy what it was doing in my body.
right, 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 right. Okay.
uh,
Thanks. Nice to know
yeah.
that. Okay.
So
Oh, yeah.
eventually I found Vipassana, and I
Okay.
knew it was my practice because I saw the result that I had been looking for 7 years. It was
Okay.
uh, very clear to me. It was
Okay.
not the most enjoyable practice I had done.
Right. Right.
So it
Very
was
true.
much more. I'm result oriented. I'm pragmatic,
Okay. Right.
and so I could see
So,
it was what I was looking for.
right, right. Just since we have Indian viewers on this channel, so in India, like we have the Goenka's Vipassana, Goenka's Vipassana. So, how is your the tradition different? And can you just some differences that you have in your tradition and
Yeah, Goenka. From my understanding, I do not have experience of Goenka, but
okay,
I'm an instructor of Satipatthana Vipassana, and so
Satipatthana. Right.
I have seen. We have had many students come that have Goenka in their history. They tend to be heavy on the acknowledgement of body sensations.
Bodily sensations, right?
Yeah, and there tends to be some challenge of differentiation with them,
Right.
being able to differentiate body and mind and the interconnection and emotion and feelings with those. Beyond that, we watch the rising and falling of the abdomen, the lineage.
Abdomen.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. The lineage I have studied and been part of comes via Mahasi Sayadaw. He was a relatively famous scholar monk from Myanmar last century. And our abbot, who passed away 17 months ago,
Okay.
he had met Mahasi in the 1950s. He was 96 when he passed away. So
Okay.
um,
Okay.
he took the teaching from Mahasi And
Okay.
Mahasi is part of a line that came direct. It's an unbroken line from Buddha.
Okay.
Something
Okay.
like 28 generations, or
Okay.
I don't remember exactly.
Amazing. Right.
But he took that practice. He tweaked it a little bit so that lay people like myself can experience the higher yanas,
Right.
and if the effort is there. So yeah.
Right. So the major part of the thing is watching the breath, rising and falling of the breath, and then there is this thing like mindful sitting, watching the breath, and then mindful walking. These are the major practices in your tradition.
Yeah, and then we're encouraged to carry the mindfulness into our daily life.
Daily life. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I know one of your questions was,
Yes.
what
How?
is mindfulness, right?
Yes. Yes. Exactly. That for the viewers, it is very important to people know, for example, what is mindfulness. There are a lot of concepts floating around. So if you can elaborate something on.
Yeah, so I'm going to give two. One is for daily life, just to understand it for daily life. Okay.
Right.
And mindfulness is the faculty that allows us to bring consciousness into the moment.
Consciousness into the moment. Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Great. Okay.
So, we have this, by adulthood, we have this mind that's well programmed, and we can live mostly on autopilot if we want to.
Very true.
And some people don't recognize there actually is a way to live consciously.
Right.
We're always paying attention to mind instead of to what's in front of us. And
Right.
so mindfulness allows us to go, oh, that's mind. Let me put this over here and be direct experience. Okay.
Right.
We all do this some, like you see a sign that says mind your step. And
Very true.
your
Mind
mind
your step.
goes to, your mind goes to you're walking and the terrain that you're
Yes.
crossing,
And that.
right?
Right. Right.
So
As
that
simple as that.
is mindfulness. Mind your
Yes.
head.
Yes.
Oh, suddenly
Yes.
you're aware of,
True.
and
True.
so that's mindfulness
So
in daily life.
in all the daily activities, being present and maybe one step back. So rather than being as a robot, we are all like robots, kind of sleepwalking animals. Becoming one step back and always being conscious of what I'm doing. I'm standing, I'm walking, I'm sitting, being conscious of that.
Mm.
Okay.
And
Okay.
even just choosing like one thing you do often in regular life, say opening and closing doors. That, okay,
Right.
I'm going to practice being mindful whenever I open and close a door.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I'm holding the doorknob. I'm turning.
Right.
You're aware of everything turning and stepping through and turning to close it. And oh, did I slam it or was I soft or right? And so that can bring more and more mindfulness into your daily life.
Right. And so, what like there's this question that if we practice mindfulness in our daily life, how does it help? Does it so we have those mental tendencies that grip us? So does it help dissolve or dissipate those tendencies over time that I practice this? How does it help? My mindfulness will help
So
me
you
grow.
know we're doing the mindfulness experiment on
Yes.
Facebook,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That is basically the question of that group, is if we practice mindfulness in our daily life enough, will it start to move mind to the side? I
Right.
believe it will, but you have to do it intently. I coach people, and not all of them sit and do meditation. And so I've seen pretty dramatic results from them just using mindfulness in their daily life.
Okay.
Now, I still have some questions, some doubt. Can it deal with the emotional garbage that we have from our pasts? And my sense is you still are going to need to be able to deal with those things at some point, just as we do in meditation. So when I put the term mindfulness in the context of meditation, my definition is a little bit different, because when we're using it in meditation, we're becoming like a bit like a scientific observer, a scientist, right? So we're using it to observe the mind-body mechanism in a manner that reveals the inner workings of mind and body. And
Great. Okay.
yeah,
Great.
there's a revelatory nature that occurs in mindfulness-based meditations where we have realizations. Oh, the nature of existence is impermanent. You know, we get grounded in that, and then it's easier to see everything comes up and goes away. There's no reason to react to it.
Right.
We don't need to cling to it or want it to go away. And so when we start developing our relationship moment to moment, where it's a neutral relationship instead of, because mind defines everything in good, bad, right, wrong.
Craving, aversion.
I
Yeah.
want it, I don't want it.
Right.
And so it
Having a
creates,
neutral relationship with everything. Right.
yeah, mind creates this relationship with existence that makes you like a yo-yo. You guys have yo-yos in India, yeah? Up and down, right? And so life can still have these, oh, I'm really enjoying this part, but you don't cling to it. And so you're not going for the ride, so to speak, that mind will and can and will take you on.
Right. So mind basically, I remember our earlier discussions that mind doesn't become your master. So, this is, so mind never dies, but it doesn't become your master. So otherwise, the lives that we live in, we are totally directed by the mind. So this reminds me also a quote by Sri Raman Maharishi, who was an Indian saint, who said that once you're enlightened, mind is like a clutch. Whenever you have to change a gear, only that time he uses the mind, and then that's it. Like, it's not the pull of the mind is not that you have that violation in you that you can decide to use it or not, right?
Yes.
So what I think is that as we use mindfulness, we get the more power over the mind, that it doesn't control us, we can control it, as to when
Yes.
we need to use it. Okay,
Yeah.
great. One question I have is that I've in the people that I've interacted with, the spiritual seekers, is that when we do meditation, I mean, it's not mindfulness, any meditation we do or any spiritual practice we do, these emotional memories, the garbage, as you said, the emotional garbage that comes up. So in mindfulness, so I know what is your response. We have interacted a lot of times, but for the viewers of my channel, how to deal with that emotional garbage that comes up during the spiritual practices. And sometimes what happens is people go away from spirituality because they cannot handle the things that are coming up. So how mindfulness, what is your thoughts?
Okay, there's a few layers to what you're talking about. So the first of these is you really need to be grounded in impermanence. That's the first issue. When you know something is going to fall away eventually, then it's easier to go through those experiences. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is that there's a dynamic between the emotion and the story, and that story being part of the creation of your ego, right?
Right.
And so those emotional experiences, trauma, and we tend to wear those like badges of courage. Like, they made me who I am. Okay.
Right.
Except for those are taken away from you.
Right.
Right?
I read somewhere that these just emotions, they were actually just there to protect you at some time in the past, but now we hold those, and they actually block our journey further.
Yeah. In some of those, it's almost like a piece of us gets locked in the past.
Great.
And yeah, and so
Yeah.
we have to go back to collect that piece of ourselves. That's why the memory keeps coming up as long as there's emotion there, right?
Right.
And there may be layers of emotion.
Yes.
So what I do is I separate the story, the picture show,
Right.
from the emotion. That's the first
Right.
thing. Because the emotion on its own is just
Doesn't
an
have much power.
emotion.
Yes.
Yeah. The story is what connects it to ego, right?
Right. Right.
And so if we separate them and we deal with the story and the emotion separately, we can look at emotion and we can learn about, oh, there's anger there. So let me
Okay.
see, where does that anger show up in my body? What's the vibration like?
Right.
We
Right.
start looking at it like a scientist.
Wonderful. Okay.
What is anger?
Right.
Right?
Like a scientist, just looking into it.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
We put all kinds of labeling on the different emotions, all kinds of values on the different emotions, subconsciously as we're growing up. So we've never stopped and really observed, what is anger?
Right.
And how do I relate to this emotion? For me, anger gave me this false sense of power. It's part of
Right.
that fight or flee response, right? And I'm
Right.
getting ready
Right.
to fight.
Right. Right.
But when you use your anger, what results does it actually give you?
Right.
Very
Right.
rare does anger give you a good result.
Right.
And when you're in anger, you're blind.
Right.
We
Everything.
just don't see clearly.
Right.
And we
Right.
can hurt people we love,
Right.
right? So you start to observe it from as many angles as you can, and then you start going, oh, I don't want anger.
Right.
At the
Right.
same time, there's the what do I want? Oh, I want peace. Eventually I want happiness, real
Right.
happiness, right?
We realize
And
that at one end you have anger, and at one hand you also have the choice to choose love and happiness.
yeah.
Right. Right. Okay.
So
Yeah.
when we're result oriented, then we want to be more effective in every aspect of our life,
Right.
but especially with our families. And so we start to realize there are much more effective ways to use with our family than anger and frustration, impatience.
Right.
When we come from our heart, really we start to be about, what's that other person need? What are they expressing?
Right. We're too
And
much in the
we learn
mind.
to listen differently.
Right.
So there's a big transition in that, but I think it comes down to dealing with those earlier emotionally tainted experiences. If you can separate the story from the
Story
emotion,
from
you
the
can
emotion.
deal with those two parts separately, and you can get rid of the emotion easier that way.
Easier that way. Great. Okay. Just one question on fear. So, like in India, we are going through this very difficult time. The COVID. It's a second wave, and it's very difficult time for everyone. And that fear is gripping every one of us. Right? What will happen to us? What will happen to our children? So, anything specific you want to share on fear? How to come out of mindfulness? Like you said already, keep watching it, separate the emotion from the story, where the sensations are coming.
The fear is real. The only thing I can give you, I'm not sure how many people will connect to,
Right.
but we're not humans having spiritual experiences.
Right.
We're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Temporary human experience, right?
Yeah, it's
Very
temporary. Your culture knows this more than probably any culture in the world. So I'm just a reminder.
No, the reminder
Right?
is very necessary for all of us.
Yeah.
Yes.
In these kind of situations, that reminder is very necessary. Now,
Yeah.
the people who are close to us, usually they've been in our lives, other lives with us.
Yes, very true.
And they're going to continue being in our lives with us.
Very true.
So, unfortunately, we're in a transition period between ages, and my suspicion is that we are going to see our population come down some, and that means we're all going to lose some people we love.
Right.
We don't really lose them.
Yes.
And to be honest, they are still accessible while we're in our bodies, but we have to
Yes.
be able to connect to higher consciousness to
Higher
experience that.
consciousness. Right.
Okay, so we have to be willing to let go of those lower vibrations, fear
Right.
and shame and anger and guilt and worry and doubt, to be able to move into that higher consciousness, so that we can have those experiences. This is accessible to everybody. I want that to be acknowledged. All of us can open our hearts, and our heart is the door to higher consciousness. It's the bridge to higher
Right.
consciousness. When we're stuck in between survival and fighting for power, we don't have access to that. So
Right.
that's where the anger and frustration, all of that
They keep
exists.
us in a low vibration.
Yeah. And when you look at what the purpose of those emotions are, it's between survival and power. When
Right.
we move
Right.
beyond that, it becomes about connection.
Right.
Okay, so in a similar sense, it's very relative to what happens with higher intelligence.
Right.
The very high intelligence people we see in the world are just able to connect more dots.
Right.
They put all the information together, and sometimes very quickly.
Right.
So that it's the same as we move up with our consciousness. We start to connect to more dots, only it's to more consciousness.
Right. So the journey, what I believe, is within me, and this is a time where it's an opportunity for me to be more mindful and to raise my vibration and to connect to the higher self. Right. Okay.
It's
Uh,
an opportunity right now for everybody to do that. We're
Absolutely.
staying at home a lot more, so we have more
Right.
time to
More time.
assess certain things,
Right.
right?
Certain things.
And
Right.
yes, what's going on in India is very frightening.
Right. 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 Very true.
That
Very true.
do not take away from that. Don't
Right.
hide
Right.
from it either.
Right. Right.
You know, when we have anger, or we have fear, or we have pain,
Right.
if we
Generally, we
stop,
repress them.
yeah, the mind does like this to those things. It doesn't
Right.
want to really look at them.
Look at them. Right.
Okay.
Okay.
But if you go into pain in the body, or you really stop and go, I'm going to look at this anger right now,
Right.
and you
Right.
really look at it, it just dissolves.
Dissolves. Right. Right.
If
So
you
this.
bring your concentrated mind to it,
Right.
just dissolves.
Right. Right. So definitely. So this is an opportunity for all of us to look into our fear and not get panicked, and also develop some concentration within us. So what I generally believe is that uh, mindfulness in daily life is possible, but some time, if we can sit, or some walking meditation one can do, it can bring that necessary concentration, so that in my daily life when fear arises, my spiritual reserves are much better, so that I can actually look into that. Right. So okay. uh,
That's why
some
we call meditation practice,
meditation practice. Absolutely.
right? Because if you don't carry it into your daily life, you're not understanding what it's for.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
That's a practice.
Yeah.
My question is on mistakes in this journey, on this mindfulness journey. Anything, any mistakes that you think uh, new meditators can avoid, or on this journey which people should not avoid, which people can avoid, something which from your experience you can share?
Learn from mistakes. The only mistake is not learning from mistakes.
Right. 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 Right.
uh, we all will make mistakes, and some of the most successful people make the most mistakes.
Right.
Right? They just learn from them well.
Right.
And
Very
so I don't think there's anything wrong with mistakes. We were never given a handbook on how to be perfect in life.
right.
And we usually learn our greatest lessons through experience, not because somebody told us to do something or not to do something.
Right. Right.
So learn from your experiences,
Experiences and mistakes. Okay.
the
Great.
good ones and especially the bad ones.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Uh, One question is with respect to one of viewers. He's a parent of a special needs child with an autism problem. Again, what will be your advice to such parents? It's sometimes very difficult to deal. The feelings that come within them when they see the children having such problems. Anything you can advise, like any thoughts that you have, for
We're
such
talking
parents?
about for the child or for
Autism.
the parents?
Of the parent has a problem, the child has a problem like autism or cerebral palsy or ADHD. So how do those parents uh, how can those parents incorporate mindfulness in their daily life to come over those problems, right? The problems that they see in their children. Any advice from you?
So, okay, my son was once upon a time diagnosed as autistic. Um,
Okay, okay,
I I did not agree with the diagnosis, however. Uh, so the first thing is I think it's important that we don't treat the child like they're broken or damaged.
okay,
Okay.
right,
Um, I think that with autism, they've created this spectrum that, in my opinion, is beneficial both in autism and ADHD, is more beneficial to the pharmaceutical companies than anything else.
right,
I'm not saying there are not conditions, because I have friends who have autistic kids who cannot function properly, right?
right, right,
In so the first side I'll deal with is the ones that are not so extreme, but like any human being, they need love. They need acceptance. Um, Try to learn to work with their issues rather than against their issues. With autism, I believe, and there's a fair amount of evidence of this, that while it can get triggered from vaccinations, I think by and large, more of it has to do with gut flora. I've lost your sound.
oh,
Oh, there you
oh,
go. Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you may want to look at the dietary
Dietary
habits.
aspects of it.
Yeah. Um, there are some gut bacteria that if they're not in balance with the other bacterias, produce neurotoxins that
Okay,
disrupt normal brain development
okay,
and function. Um,
okay,
and so that would be for parents who have cases of autism, that would be something to look at. Uh,
okay,
ADHD, I also think there's a dietary component a lot of times, but I also think that you may have some environmental conditions where there's higher anxiety. The children are very susceptible to the energies they're around,
okay,
and
right,
when the home has anxiety
right,
involved,
right.
mind is not very
They can,
stable.
right. They can sense
Yeah,
those energies. They can
they
sense the anxiety in
sympathize
the.
with it. It becomes
Mm,
part of their experience.
right,
And so with ADHD, I would be looking at what's going on in family dynamics,
right.
as well as diet, because if you're on a heavy sugar diet as a child, that's really
And
not
create
healthy.
problems.
Yeah.
Okay.
So uh, there's that. Now, with the more extreme cases, there's also another side to understand of child development for all, not cerebral palsy. That is a genetic disorder. I don't have an easy solution. One of my good friends has a child like that who is a lovely child, and they have taken it on like one of their ways to learn love.
Right.
Uh,
Wow.
and
Great. Okay.
yeah, that
Yeah.
if you can make it about one of your spiritual lessons and
Yes.
practices, I think that is probably the best. Yes, you're still going to have days you're a stressed human being and that doesn't show up.
Right.
Forgive yourself when that happens.
Right.
We do our best, right?
Right.
So the other thing I was going to say is when you look at child development, you know, I don't know India's education system, but we certainly try to put everybody in the same box in America.
Right. Right.
And we do it
Here
here in
also it's
Thailand too. And
right.
children between 1 and 7, they aren't conscious yet. They're living, most of them. I mean, there are
Right.
the Beethovens and Bachs of the world that start creating beautiful music at 2 or 3 years old. That's a
Right.
different
Right.
story. But the average
Right.
child does
Right.
not experience consciousness until between 7 and 13 years old.
Right.
We know this because consciousness can be measured in hertz. And consciousness shows up between at 13 hertz, and that doesn't usually happen below 7 years old. So
Okay.
children below 7 years old, they should be what they are primarily developing is motor function skill.
Right.
And so they should be playing, they should be active.
Right.
Take that iPad away. I
Very
know
true.
it's easy as a parent,
Right.
but give them bicycles and
Something to
skateboards
play.
and
Yeah. Outdoor
things
activities.
that make it activity.
Right. Right.
Schools that think they're supposed to be sitting still.
Very true. Schools have to rethink on the way they teach. Yeah.
Yes, we should be designing education for what we are, not for what society wants.
Very nice. Very true.
Yeah, we've done it backwards.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree with you. Yeah.
So, and for parents, I think once you see that consciousness show up, you may see a little bit of emotional intelligence start speaking, having mature conversations with your child.
Great.
It's you who doesn't think they can have those.
Yeah.
They are wanting
Child
to understand more of this mechanism of emotion and mind, and you can help them develop that.
Right.
And so by 7 or 8 years old, start having those more important discussions.
Let the consciousness in them start flowering. Yeah. Don't impede that.
As I said, I'm a parent. I'm not just speaking out of theory.
Yeah.
My son is 13, and he is so impressive to me, what he understands, how this works. Even years ago, when my sister babysat two girls regularly, one time we had their family over for dinner, and the younger of the 2 girls was 4 or 5 years old. She had just started school. And Eris was telling me what they were teaching her about how to manage anger. And I said, "Oh, how do you do that?" And she said, "Well, I either turn around and I count to 10 and I breathe slowly. And then I turn back around and I'm not angry anymore." And I said, wow, at her age, that's wonderful.
Right.
Now, I think she was conscious a little bit earlier than normal, to be honest.
Right.
Her mom
But
was also a yoga teacher.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But then I asked her, I said, "Eris, where does anger come from?" And she said, "My mind."
Okay. That's very mature response.
That at 4 or 5 years old. So
True.
children really,
Wonderful.
yes, they can pick these things up very easily if they're given that opportunity.
Right. Actually, just a few days back, I also did a video on my parenting journey. So my thoughts also were similar lines that, we should not look down on our children, that they are small, and, we should just treat them as equal and let them just facilitate. They are so intelligent, much more intelligent than us. So
they see clearly.
They
don't have all the other crap.
Cloud of
yeah.
Very
and
true.
So
Very true.
Okay, sometimes they go, "Oh, you're fat." They're just being honest.
Honest, right?
Okay,
Very
yeah,
true.
I got a little fat,
Right.
but no, children, if you give them the space, I mean, to
Right.
grow,
Space to
all
grow.
humans, we need space to grow.
Everyone, yeah, very
Yeah.
true.
And so children, they need their space to play alone sometimes. Let them have their
Yes. Let
imaginary
them.
world. That's not a
Yes. Yes.
dangerous thing, you know?
Yes. Yes.
If they have trouble taking tests and they have an imaginary friend, teach
Right.
them to use their imaginary friend to help
Friend.
them in the tests,
Very true. Very
you
true.
know? The imaginary friend is part of mind and it can be very helpful.
Right. Right.
Okay? So,
Don't impose your own kind of, your
structure
own
on them.
structures on them.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
And
Okay.
ask for their input in family issues. You'll be
Very true.
surprised. Sometimes they can be your counselor.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. Being a parent, I know. So I know it.
You know,
Can counsel us very well.
oh, I mean, what is a
Right.
counselor good for but to tell you the truth, right?
Truth.
And so
Very true.
sometimes the child can see things very truthfully, and if you listen, they can help you.
Yes, yes, yes. And generally, as parents, we hide our any issues and everything. So better to a lot of things we can discuss and okay. So very very useful parenting advice also from you.
Well, I
Uh,
think you bringing this subject up, uh, my mind worked on how can we create a better world since I was 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay,
okay,
when
right,
I was observing those unhealthy relationships,
right,
and
right.
a few years ago, when my son was about 9, we were driving home from school one day, and he just turned to me and he said, "Dad, if you could change 3 things in the world to make it a better place, what would they be?" Now, I had thought about this for 30 years at that point,
Okay,
more than 30
okay,
years,
okay.
but I hadn't found an answer until that moment. It was almost like I had waited for the moment for my son to ask me this.
Ask this, right,
And I answered without thinking. I said, well, I think the first thing I would do is teach everybody how to be a healthy member of a family. And he
right,
says, oh, I think if you did that, you don't need 2 and 3. And I
right,
thought about his response and I thought, I think he's correct. If we
right.
start with our own families,
Our homes, right,
yes, and we
right,
really work on bringing our family to a point of health where each individual is part of that small collective. Each one
right,
isn't healthy as an individual, but also
right,
healthy in that collective.
right.
Then we start to spread that health and we
Process, right,
can make this a better world.
right.
I
We have to
am,
start from our home, right?
yes,
Yeah.
that's the first level of higher consciousness is where we move out of the individual, where we're worried about
Yes.
survival and power and
Right.
whatever's between, right? We move into, oh, I'm part of a family. Now, we all have either healthy or unhealthy or somewhere in between experiences with our families. And when we grow up as adults, we meet people who maybe they came from unhealthy family experience, but they are determined to change that with their own family. And so there's
Right.
always a generation where that can happen. I'm one of those fortunate ones who grew up in a very healthy family. We were taught we don't go to bed angry.
Okay.
So
Very
there's
nice.
anger, we sit down and we talk it out,
Just talk it out. Right.
and we learned that everybody in the family loves each other. We
Right.
sometimes make mistakes and we accidentally
Right.
hurt one another sometimes. I can't
Right.
tell you the last time that happened to my family. It was a long
Right.
time ago.
Right. Right.
But you
Those little
develop,
things. Yeah.
yeah, you develop good habits, good practices that family works. Every time you as the father are making a
Right.
decision that affects your family,
Right. Right.
because it affects the family, talk to them about it. Get their
Right.
perceptions.
Right.
They may come
Wonderful.
out with a
Wonderful.
better
Yeah. Yeah.
solution.
Oh, better solution. Absolutely. Rather what I can construct from a limited mind, when I have my entire family together and we can actually devise solutions which are better for the family as a whole.
Yes.
So these small changes, like you said, if we bring, they are the first steps towards a better humanity, I will say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Start from your home. Great inputs. Thanks.
And
I'll actually do a
these are
separate
things that
video in
all
Hindi
of
also.
us can do.
Yes, very true.
You know, that's why it can make a better world.
Better
Most of the
world.
other things many of us cannot do.
Right.
Right.
But this
And
is
so,
something which every one of us can do. These small changes in our daily life.
yeah.
Okay. Great. Uh, Seen, I have this question about your, if you can share something about your mindfulness experience. You have your Facebook group and you are a mindfulness coach. So anything you want to share so that the viewers can benefit. I'll give the links down below in the description, but anything you can share about your initiative.
Okay. The initiative is to answer the question whether if we get enough people practicing mindfulness in everyday life, can we change the world? That is the base level. Now, as far as my own experiences with meditation and mindfulness, like what have I gotten out of it? I have empty mind more often than I don't. To be honest, I'm honored to be on your show. When
This is an honor
this
for
day
me.
came, I don't actually experience excitement very often, but I saw my
Wonderful.
mind get excited, and in a way, this is a
Very fine.
almost
Yeah.
an arrogant idea, but I feel like, oh, I get to maybe give something back to India that gave me an open heart.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
This is very kind of you.
And oh, it brings a little bit of tears to my eyes, to be honest. I
Okay.
have to control
I
the.
know. Thank you so
So,
much.
mindfulness has given me the ability to live consciously, and that allows me to be happy. I it goes from acceptance into appreciation into gratitude. And when I look out and I have a garden this way, I have a bunch of trees that way.
Right.
There are all these life forms around me. We go to Mars and we see no life. You
Right.
know, how long did it take for Source or God or whatever you want to call it to roll out this existence that we get to come experience and have appreciation for that? So without mindfulness, I would not have that. I experienced depression for on and off for years, and I don't have that anymore. I have very seldom any conflict in any of my relationships. I have very good friendships, and my family, even though I'm on the other side of the planet, I remain very close to.
Connected. Okay.
Yeah. I have a very strong heart connection with my family, so I will know psychically if there is something wrong with any of them, right? The same goes with some other people that I'm very close to. So
Right. Right.
That's kind of the personal. Now, the other side of the meditation, I've had a lot of extraordinary experiences. Those experiences for any serious meditator will happen. You don't intend for them to happen, but
Right.
they are in our lineage. We understand them to be acknowledgement that yes, I'm going the right direction, but do not cling to them.
Cling to
Do
them.
not
Okay.
get attached to them,
Do
because
not
then
get
you get
attached.
stuck,
Right.
right? And so I've filled my body with light. I've become radiant and very still inside. I have. I mentioned earlier the pre-experience to Kundalini awakening.
Right.
I've had hearing into other dimensions. At this stage, I connect to a higher consciousness and I receive what are like formulas for things like compassion and faith and that are just simplistic
Downloads.
understanding of what you have to do to create those things.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
And so as I'm experiencing that, I now have to acknowledge I don't cling to those things, because
Right.
it's nice to get that higher consciousness and those
Right.
messages,
Right.
right?
Very
But if
important
I
thing.
want to continue even higher, I have to just let those be.
Okay. Right. Don't cling to them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
don't link
Yeah.
to them. I've
Okay.
been in
Very nice.
various states of bliss. I've been in, there are multiple times when I'm on a meditation retreat. You know, I go to a temple, and so 4 a.m, a monk comes and hits the gong to wake everybody. If I'm already in farther along, 7-8 days into the retreat, I'm in a very still space. The body becomes like a still lake. And when that person
Wow.
hits the gong, it's like somebody throwing a rock in the lake and you feel ripple.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, it's a
Who would
fantastic
not
experience.
want to be in such a state? I mean, this is amazing. I like, yeah,
That same state, you can sense the energies from plants. So and in those energies, there's some knowledge, some understanding of why they developed the way they have. Like an
Okay.
easy one to explain, there's a very common plant here that is it has big thorns, and they usually have it in the fronts of temples because it's said that it keeps the bad spirits away.
Okay.
Well, that plant has an energy that's like spite, like the very deep-seated anger.
Oh, okay.
And so when I one morning I was in that state and I'm waiting to see the instructor, and I stood in front of this plant and whoa, now I understand why you created that thorn, you know, because they have these big sharp thorns. So there are various states that allow us to access other consciousness.
Other consciousness.
At this stage, I'm aware I'm starting to access like water is a higher consciousness. It's a higher consciousness in form, and so it has. I've started connecting with it, and it started to teach me. From that, I understand fire and earth and wind or air are also forms of consciousness. And they are part of this planet. They're in a service to provide a planet that gives life. So there are a lot of fantastic experiences along the way, but you kind of have to get past those early ones that are not so enjoyable, like boredom, frustration, doubt,
Sleepiness.
worry, sleepiness. Yes, sleepiness comes
During
on a
meditation.
retreat no matter what. That comes, and so we start breaking that down towards the end of the retreat.
Right.
We really work on getting over that and seeing that it is just a condition. It is not. It's not a necessity. Okay. Time is interrelated with sleepiness. And so you have heard the great saints over long periods of time talk about one of the most difficult things to get past is time. And so that happens late in a retreat.
In a retreat. Right. So, just anyone, for any viewer who wants some sort of a support in terms of learning mindfulness, one is definitely the Facebook page, the Facebook group that you have. I'll post a link to that group if anyone wants to join. Other than that, can you help? Like, if someone wants to learn mindfulness from you, what are the ways we can approach you, and anything you want to share?
So we, as you're going to post, there's the mindfulness experiment on Facebook. A co-host and myself we're in the middle of recording podcasts for mindfulness in daily life. That will come out under, I have a blog called www.claritysprout.com.
ClaritySprout.com. Okay.
Yeah,
Sure. I'll give the
claritysprout.com.
link.
And that will come out under that name, but the first season will be the mindfulness experiment. So it focuses all on using mindfulness in daily life.
Great. That will be a
So
useful
those are the
resource.
main ways. Like for your viewers, I give meditation instruction for free.
Right.
It's part of the lineage I come from. It was given to me. It was a blessing for me.
Okay.
It's my duty to pass that on.
Okay.
I
Very nice.
also do personal coaching
Okay.
for those who are interested in doing that, but that's not free because it's very time consuming.
Right.
So that
Right.
can be found on the claritysprout.com.
The website. Okay. Okay. Great. Very, very useful this session. Anything that you have, anything to share further from your side?
Thank you for
Great,
this
great, great.
very
Thank you so
fortunate
much.
and blessed life, and thank you for
Um,
India for being part of that.
Thank you, Seem.
One more thing.
Yes.
May you overcome the fear and the challenge that you are presently facing.
Thank you so
May
much.
bliss be
Very
as
true.
many of yours as possible.
Thank you, Seem, so much for your all the useful insights over the years that you've accumulated and shared with us, for all your time, for all your blessings, and for all your help and support. Thank you so much. We're very grateful. So we close the interview here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having me.
God bless you. Thank you so much. God bless you.